Hey, She Slayers, and welcome to another episode of She Slays the Day podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lauryn Brunslick, and it is spooky season, y'all. Spooky season is October? I don't know. I have these pillows. Here's how I determine spooky season. Okay. I wanted these black and white, like checkered pillows for my porch. I was getting them for more actually for Christmas. And I couldn't find the right pillow. And so I'm at TJ Maxx and I found these pillows that on one side are perfect. They're like black and white checkered and it was everything I dreamed. But on the opposite side, it says spooky. They're like black with orange letters that says spooky. And so it's really funny because these are like my fall and winter pillows. I have spring and summer pillows that are like this cute coral. They sit on my rocking chairs. I'll take a picture for you. But it's really funny because if like one of my kids is playing on the porch and the pillow gets thrown, just on the floor, and then my husband, being helpful, picks up the pillow and puts it back on the rocking chair, sometimes he doesn't pay attention and he'll have like spooky up and it'll be December. And so people will come over and be like, what's up with your Halloween pillows? And I'll be like, oh, you're not supposed to see the back. You're just supposed to see the cute front black and white other side. But right now it is officially okay for it to say spooky. And that means we're in spooky season. But just got back from a run listening to my favorite spooky podcast, Morbid, who I believe Callie Horseman, who was a guest a couple weeks ago, turned me on to last year around this time. But yeah, there's not very many people in my life who enjoy listening to podcasts about murders as much as I do. Like Kirby and I'll be driving and I'll be like, you want to listen to Morbid? And he'll be like, not really. And I'm like, come on. This one was just about a haunted prison. So it's not that bad. There's only a couple of murders and they're not that bad. But I don't know. Because Kirby's like, why do you listen to this stuff? And I'm like, it makes my day just not seem so stressful when I hear about other people's days that got murdered. I don't know. It just puts my life all into perspective. I don't know. But what is funny is I will not watch horror movies. Okay, so let's just be clear here. There are some people who love horror movies. No, not here for it. I hate them. I think it all goes back to Ernest Scared Stupid, a movie I watched when I was like 9 years old. And if all of you listening have never watched any of the Ernest movies, like very dumb comedian, like child comedian, like almost like a Pee Wee Herman style. I don't know. And he had a Halloween themed one and there was this monster in it. And I remember turning it off and like I would have nightmares for nights and nights. And finally, like a week later, 2 weeks after still having these nightmares because I couldn't watch the movie, my mom rented it. And I remember she brought it home and I was like, what is that doing there? And I started crying and she was like, we're going to watch it. We're going to have the lights on. We're going to watch it all the way through because she knew like it's a kid's scary movie. So it ends well. And like, she's like, you're envisioning something worse. And so she was right. I did stop having nightmares after that. Which is funny because I'm just picturing like taking that to the next level of like your kid watches, I don't know, like Scream or something terrible. And you're like, no, we're watching this murder movie all the way through. Charlie asked me last night because we were watching The Hustler, which is like it's a game show where you're trying to figure out like who's the liar and blah, blah. And they give these clues and they said like the hustler has performed 3 exorcisms. Charlie's like, what's an exorcism? I'm like, I don't want to talk about it. Do I have to answer that? So I didn't. One last spooky season thing, just since we're talking about movies. Have any of you people with kids tried showing your kids Hocus Pocus yet? Hocus Pocus is like the greatest Halloween movie of all time, and I will stand by it to my death. But there's definitely an age, like I feel like I watched it when, like, I think of it as a kid movie. And then when you go to show it to your kids, you're like, they say the word virgin like a lot. And it's a little creepy. They're talking about like killing children. I'm like, wow, this is not the Disney movie I remember. So anyways, it's spooky season. What are we doing today? Oh, we have a guest. We have Dr. Brenna Highby on. I'll tell you all about her in a sec. But first we're going to do a listener highlight, and this is on Apple Podcasts. And this is from Genesis 2E315. They clearly did not want me to out them. So we don't know if this is a boy or a girl. I'm reading it. I'm pretty sure this is a girl. It says, so much love for this podcast. Lady Chiros and non-Chiros, you need to be listening to this podcast. There is authentic and honest advice in each episode, and I have never been bored. Really? Really, Genesis 2? You've never fast-forwarded? I don't know. I look forward to it every week on my drive to National. Dr. Lauryn, you have such genuine energy and excitement that helps fuel my week. Thank you for your effort to strengthen and empower women all over the place. Yeah, girl. So what do we know about her? We know that she goes to National. We're assuming she's a female. We don't know anything else. What do you think E315 means, you guys? Like, I don't know. Do we think Genesis, like, is that like the book of Genesis? But then it says Genesis 2, and there's no second book of Genesis. So I need to know more. But yeah, so thank you for that. As I was reading it, I like had my ADHD kicked in and was like, it's kind of vain that you read these. And it's weird that 120 some episodes in, you've never had that thought, that it's kind of self-serving and braggy. It's kind of braggy. But I did it to give a shout out for people saying nice things because I wanted to thank them. But yeah, I'm going to keep doing it because I love giving acknowledgement. If you're, like I've always said, if you're going to take the time to write it, I am going to publicly thank you. And they do help people find the podcast. But yeah, that's weird. I've never thought about it. But I have also never been accused of being humble. So you'll also have that. Okay, so next week I'm going to be in Clearwater, Florida. I hope I'm going to see some of you. We need to talk for a second. If you are an avid listener and follower of She Slays Today podcast, I will remind you that I have something undiagnosed called facial blindness. Okay, it is a real thing. I think. I have not confirmed it. But like the new CEO of Apple has it. And when he meets people, apparently he says like, I'm so-and-so, it's nice to meet you. I have facial blindness, so you'll probably have to like reintroduce yourself. Again, I have not confirmed any of that, if that's true. But there are people who don't like differentiate details on a person's face. And it takes multiple times of meeting them to actually be able to see them as a unique individual. Believe me, it is very difficult to watch movies because Kirby and I'll be just watching a movie if it's like the first time and I'll be like, who's that guy? Is that the same guy? And Kirby will be like, yes, that is the main character. We are an hour into this movie. What? And I'm like, he's wearing a hat. I don't know. It's a little more shadowy. So if I've met you before, either online or in person, please come up and say hey to me. I won't know if I've ever met you or not. So just say like, we've never actually met, but I'm Jenna. Or like, we've met before. I'm Jenna. And just don't take it personal. I love you and I appreciate you, but I have facial blindness. Okay. There was something else I was going to say there. Oh, come say hi. No, that was my point. Come say hi to me in Clearwater and listen to me talk. So let's get to our guest. Today, we welcome Dr. Brenna Highby from Experience Wellness Chiropractic. She is part of a 4-doc team in Plymouth, Minnesota, which is in like the northwest part of the Twin Cities. They are a family wellness-based practice that specializes in pediatric, pregnancy, and children with spectrum and sensory struggles. And she grew up on her family farm in Southwest Minnesota, where her desire to love and serve others was born. She attended Augustana University, where she received her Bachelor of Arts and later her doctorate in chiropractic from Northwestern Health Sciences University, which is my alma mater. During her schooling, she fell in love with Tonal Chiropractic, which, teaching of innate chiropractic, is that what I learned 100 episodes ago? Teaching innate something? That's what TIC stands for. She winks at me because she knows I forgot it. Damn it. And how it changed her own health and life. Her favorite part of practice in connecting with each new person, educating, empowering, and providing hope to those who are lost and help them live their most vibrant lives. When she's not serving in the practice, she spends her time at the yoga studio, reading a book with an Americano, plant shopping, because she's amazing and we all love plants, various crafting adventures, or quality time with family and friends. And we're going to talk about a tonal technique. So I talk a little bit in my interview with her about why I wanted to bring on a tonal doc. But ultimately, just to summarize it for you here, I believe that it's important that we are reminded that there's more than one way to align the spine, and that a more forceful technique doesn't work with everyone. And, per usual, this is never you can be a flying 7 doc. I don't care. I bet you get great results in your practice, and you can be a Nuka doc, and you can be activator. Like, there's so many techniques. I just think it's fun to talk to someone. Also, I believe I say this in there, but I want to make sure I say it a second time because it's that important to me. Before Bobby Vormans passed away. When Bobby and I got done with recording our episode, I clicked stop and she's like, okay, here are some episodes you need to do. And this was one of them. And she specifically requested Brenna. And I don't know if Dr. Brenna, I think she was a little shy about like, oh gosh, why do you want me to talk about are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, Brenna, Dr. Bobby called you out. Girl, you're getting on this podcast and recording with me. So, and she did amazing. I knew she would do amazing. She just didn't believe in herself enough, but she killed it. So let's pray and let's do this. Everyone, take a breath in. Whether you're loading the dishwasher, going for a run, driving. If you're driving, keep your eyes open. Relax your jaw. Check in with your heart. How you doing? Do you need a hug? I love you. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Thank you for connecting and allowing space for people to come on here and talk to us about different stuff. Thank you for keeping your heart open to different ways of doing things, different ways of serving people, and reminding ourselves to not get defensive or judge when we are propositioned something that's different than we do or think. Allow us to continue to be human beings that are constantly learning and curious and just doing this all together. Life is stressful enough that this podcast does not need to be taken so damn seriously. So connect with yourself, connect with people you love today, laugh about something, maybe listen to Morbid Podcast if you're into it. In your name we pray. Amen. That was a weird one, but I'm okay. I'm here for it. All right, crew. This is Dr. Brenna Highby talking about tonal technique. Okay, Dr. Brenna, welcome to She Slays the Day. I know you're nervous. I'm sorry.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So before we kind of jump in today, I did want to share with the listeners a little bit about how this specific topic and you specifically came about to be the person talking on this. So is it too formal to say the late Bobby Vormans?
Yeah, I don't know.
It seems very formal. The recently deceased Bobby Vormans, who anybody listens knows is a really good friend and of mine and Brenna's, and made a big impact in chiropractic and was just made a big impact in life. And after she came to Rice Lake and sat with me and we recorded her episode at the end, like she was going to be going back home. And she was like, okay, so I have some suggestions she was one of the few people who's a close friend of mine who listened to every episode. Most of my friends, I think, are like, I've heard you talk a lot, Lauryn. I love you. I don't need to hear so much of you in my life. And she was but that's just how she rolled, isn't it? Like just one of those people who, of course, she listened to every episode, but she's like, all right, so you need an episode on this. And I'm like, oh, I'm writing it down. Okay. Episode on this. And you also need an episode on a tonal technique. And I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. And she's like, and I think you should interview Brenna. And I was like, yeah, okay. Sounds good. And so then, did I reached out to you before she passed?
You did.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then we had to actually reschedule because of her funeral and stuff. So you kind of had no choice but to say
I had no choice.
You really did.
Bobby is amazing. And I got to take a couple hours with her that were tonal based. And whenever she'd find me anywhere else, if we'd cross paths, she's like, can you adjust me? She'd find me. And it was like, of course, but she just seemed like such a big deal to me. Like she was such a powerful presence. It was intimidating. Like, you want me to check you? Like, absolutely, I will. And so I couldn't say no when she was the one that wanted me to talk with you about tonal.
Yeah. She really had a way of making you feel so seen and so special. It was just,
she would find you in a group of people. And I think she did that with a lot of people and make as many people in the room feel special as possible.
Yeah. I mean, both you and I were, I don't know if you still are, but in a coaching group, and how I'd known Bobby a little bit before that, but like, that's how we really got closer. And that was a huge thing is I felt like in that specific coaching group, no offense to them, but like, it seemed to be a very like hierarchy and like, who's the thing and who are you having are you having the conversation with the most important person in the room? And Bobby just didn't care. She was just like, whoever she was talking to was the most
who's the most vibrant person, not who's the most successful person, right? Yeah. That's what I always felt from her.
Yeah. So why don't we start with just kind of who you are, where you work?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Brenna. I'm a chiropractor in the northwest suburbs of the Twin Cities at Experience Wellness Chiropractic. I'm originally from southwestern Minnesota, actually, a really small town, and I grew up on a farm there. So I'm a farm girl raised, but now living in the city. And so that's a little bit about me.
Where did you go to chiropractic school?
I went to school at Northwestern here in the Twin
Okay,
Cities.
What year did you graduate?
I graduated in 2017.
Okay, I was really nervous. You were going to be like, 2011, like the year, like right, 2010, Lauryn, we graduated together. That would literally be what would happen to me where I'd be like, wait, what? Oh, I just walk around offending people. Okay. 2017.
In 2017, actually, when I was a student, you adjusted me at a seminar. I don't know if you remember that.
No, of course I don't remember that.
Yeah. It was like a women's based one here in the city. And they had us all line up to get adjusted.
Yeah, you're right. Adjusted.
Yeah, you were just like slaying. Literally, it's funny that your thing is called like She Slays now. Because like I was like, dang, this girl is just like giving the power.
I was in a dress.
You were in like a tight black pencil dress.
See?
Yeah, I went to school in the Twin Cities. Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So then when you were in Northwestern, I mean, I know Northwestern very well. So it's kind of great having you on as the person talking about this. Because Northwestern is a diversified, I don't know what, I didn't know that there were different techniques beyond diversified.
Right. That's all they teach you. Right.
Right. And so like, did you start learning, like, what was your experience like at Northwestern? Did you start seeking out other ways of adjusting or?
Yeah. And with that, like, I didn't have a lot of chiropractic basis before coming to school. Like, I had never been to a chiropractor before applying to chiropractic school. So my knowledge of chiropractic was very small. Mm-hmm. But as I was going through school, I was getting connected with different upper trimester kids, and they started introducing me to torque release technique,
okay,
which is originally what I kind of learned. And they gave me my first tonal adjustment, and I was immediately intrigued with how specific the adjustments were and how it felt very principled, which is not what I was being taught in school, right, at all.
Oh.
So as I began to like learn a bit more about it, was like, oh my gosh, this is about like the intelligence of the body. Like, why don't we learn about this?
Is that what you mean by principled?
Yeah, exactly. Like focusing on nervous system, innate intelligence. I was like, this is so cool. And then that same student invited me to a tonal seminar that I thought was torque release technique or TRT, but actually ended up being Talski tonal chiropractic, which is a different tonal model. And it's what I practice now. But it was like completely eye-opening and like drinking from a fire hose of knowledge that I had been like wanting to be quenched through school that wasn't being quenched.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the only, when I was in chiropractic at Northwestern, I went to a Corin. Is that, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I think, yes.
I went to like, it was at some gymnasium like talk, and he was there talking. And I remember just being like, holy what? And it was incredible. And then I just went back to school on Monday and was like, that never happened. Because so like, how did you, cause where were you in the process? Do you remember when you kind of like started to love the tonal technique?
Yeah. I was like a T5.
Okay. So like you're like halfway in the meat of adjusting.
Yeah. Yes, for sure.
So how did you balance? This is what I think I want to do, but this is what I have to do to pass school. I did not. I mean, I was going to ask you that question. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I mean, obviously, like we got to do what we got to do to pass boards and get through things. But I also didn't find internships that were practicing more of a diversified model. So like I sought out the tonal offices in the Twin Cities so that I could continue to master in that, and just did my best, got through school. But then I had the beauty of having a whole year of internships that were all tonal based to be a master at that.
Got it. That seems really like common sense that Lauryn did that.
No, and like fair, like who knew? Like there's more offices that are doing this, right? Like not everybody knows that.
Yeah. Now you know your Enneagram, right? You said
I do. Yeah.
Wing 3.
So I am a 2 to a fault. Like I am a helper.
My associate is a 2, and she's amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. I mean, the desire to like love others, serve others, be loved in return. That's me 100%. But I feel like I have more of the 3 wing just because I'm more like image conscious, more of that performance-based qualities, maybe self-care. But it was very clear when I learned what my stress number is, that was me, because when 2s are under stress, they swing to an 8. And for me, my language gets very direct, very blunt, very to the point. And like my team members like laughed out loud when they read that. And I'm like, yeah, that's you. It's like, I'm loving until I'm extremely stressed.
I know multiple 2s, and my mom is an 8. So like, it is really funny where it's just like, whoa, this is like a Jekyll Hyde type thing for sure. So as you were starting to get close to graduation, did you immediately, have you only ever worked for Experience Life or
Experience Wellness?
Yeah.
What's funny about that is they were my first chiropractors, actually. So as I was in that T5, T6 point of my schooling, I was feeling very incongruent because I was struggling in my health a ton. And I was like, how do I expect to like graduate, recommend care to people on a day-to-day basis when I'm not well myself? And so I sought them out and went through a whole new patient appointment, got the insight scans done, got a care plan, and I committed to it. And it changed my life. It was the best investment I ever did.
As a Wing 3, was there any part of you that was like, this is a really good strategic move to like set up a job?
It was more so an internship.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it was more like, I want to intern here.
Yeah.
As at first, like that wasn't really on my mind. I was like, I just want to get care. And then I noticed like, oh my gosh, my body is changing. And I noticed like, this could be work that I could do for a very long time and not have like that wear and tear on my body that I'd need to be worried about. And so I was like, I'm going to intern with these people with the full intention of leaving, which I did for my T10. But then when they offered me a position, I couldn't say no. So.
Okay. So was there any part of you that was thinking I will start a practice after graduation, or?
That's what my plan was for probably half of my schooling. I was like, yep. Because they tell you, associates are going to get eaten alive. You're never going to be successful. You're not going to be happy. And so I was like, nope, I'm going to open my own practice because I'm not going to find someone I'm going to want to work with. Yep. And then the people that I work with now are so amazing. My boss, Dr. Jeremy, is amazing. And I knew that this was a team that I was going to feel very included with and feel very supported with. And now I don't know how many don't work with teams. Like, it's amazing.
I obviously can only judge a book by its cover for your clinic that you work for, but like, seems like when you talk about like, when I talk on the podcast of like, there are beautiful associate relationships out there where like you are nurtured and you are a part of a team and you are not treated like a workhorse. You are treated like a powerful doctor that has input on the direction and mission of this clinic. Like that does exist. And so yeah. Okay. So what's the technique that you guys practice?
Yeah. So we practice what's called Tonal Chiropractic. It was developed by Dr. Marvin Talski. He's in his 57th year of 5-day week practice.
Wow.
Amazing, right? So we kind of joke and call him like the godfather of chiropractic. But he's actually, what most people don't know, but he's the original developer of TRT. And so,
really?
Yeah.
So, I didn't tell you I was going to ask this question. So it's okay if you don't really know, but like, how did TRT and Talski kind of
separate?
Yeah.
So Dr. Jay Holder is the guy that's kind of in charge of TRT right now. And he actually interned for Dr. Talski and created the instrument called the integrator and said, help me develop a technique around this instrument. And so Dr. Talski did that. And so they worked together for many years until Dr. Talski found that his work was continuing to evolve. He was finding new findings and ways to like clear the nervous system of stuck patterns. And so he just knew the work needed to develop from there. And that's when he branched off and began his own work called Talski Tonal Chiropractic. Okay.
Got it.
Yeah. So, and for those that are unfamiliar with like what tonal is, because we haven't really talked about that, it's very light touch work. So it's gentle yet effective, working with the nervous system without having to put a structural input into the system.
Like a thrust.
Like a thrust. Correct.
Yeah. So how do you explain, like in an ROF, like what's kind of, you don't need to get into like the neuro, like, but like, how do you basically explain if I was a patient who's only been adjusted like a diversified, like, wait, what, how is this going to get like, how does it work? Quote unquote?
Yeah. The way I explain it to our patients is we start a lot by looking to the feet. So if the patient is laying face down, it's like, we're starting by looking to your feet because they give us lots of information of where your nervous system is storing tension and stress that needs to get released. And so we look at leg length inequalities as well as the different tension patterns of the feet. And so I don't use these words to the patient, but for the chiropractors listening, the feet may turn into pronation, supination, inversion, eversion, Achilles tension, as well as adduction of the legs. And so I demonstrate those different feet patterns with the patient so they feel what I'm talking about. And so we look for those different feet and leg length things, as well as breath changes, the discontinuity of energy or paraspinal tension patterns along the spine. And we use all these different indicators to figure out where does the body most need an adjustment to begin to heal and make changes. So by finding that window in and correcting the primary subluxation patterns without putting a big high force structural correction. I tell them like typically no popping, cracking, twisting into the nervous system. And usually there's no more than 3 adjustments given at one appointment. And it's focusing mainly on those rest and digest parasympathetic parts of the nervous system.
How do you describe, or how do you explain to a patient that the popping noise is like, I know this sounds like such a simple, but like, how do you communicate? Like you don't need a popping noise in order for an adjustment to happen.
That's a great question. So the way that we kind of take this from Dr. Fletcher, who's like my second, like biggest mentor between Dr. Talski, is like Dr. Fletcher is amazing that works at Insight. And he talks about these 3 different ways you can look at affecting the body. And most people think of The first is like the muscle system, right? You go a little bit deeper, it's the structural system, but like what the spine protects is the nervous system. And so like, this is what we need to directly input, and you just don't need a thrust to impact that system.
Yeah. Okay. That's a great explanation. Do you find that there are certain patients that a more tonal approach works for, like the better for, like people who really are not going to respond super well to a more diversified, or, I don't mean to be offensive if I accidentally call it traditional. I don't mean that, but
Yeah. I wouldn't say that there's a certain demographic that this like benefits more than others. At our office, we see a lot of pediatrics, prenatal, neurosensory kids. Obviously, for those who have big spinal fusions or severe degeneration that can't handle a manual adjustment, that works great for them because we can still impact that nervous system. But truthfully, it does work on everybody, and some are more receptive than others. Some people actually do what's called like processing on the table, meaning their bodies kind of like twitch and move as the nervous system unwinds tension, which is like super fun as the provider to watch that happen. And sometimes they're completely aware of it, sometimes they're not. So it can be pretty wild. But in regards to people like not responding, like I believe in the whole chiropractic profession, like there's at least one person that doesn't respond as fast as we want, or not as much as you want them to, right? And this depends on their commitment to be well too. Like, are they coming as often as you're telling them to? And truthfully, like the consideration of limitation of matter principle, right? In that, how much stress has their body been through up to this point, or how much are they currently putting on it that we need to know, can they adapt from that? I mean, there's some things that are difficult to overcome. We all wish everyone drank enough water, moved as much as we want them to, ate well, took care of their mind. And obviously some people do those things and others don't, and depend only on chiropractic, which can be challenging. But for the most part, people respond really well, but it does take time and repetition, just like everybody else.
Yeah. And I guess you wouldn't really have a frame of reference of if it takes longer. I mean, I am familiar with tonal techniques, and I kind of am answering my own question where it's like, no, it just somehow doesn't take longer than the more aggressive techniques. And you've never, you learned like let's just say like a side posture. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you ever have the urge? Like if like an SI joint, you're like, all right, it's primary. I've assessed it's primary. I'm working on it. And it's like being really resistant. Do you ever have the urge to just like get it? No, probably not.
I mean, I don't have the natural just like urge to need to side posture someone. But obviously listening to their body is super important, and knowing exactly what that person needs. And sometimes there is a place for manual adjustment. That doesn't mean that you only have to practice with a tonal adjustment every time. There is time and places for it, 100%.
How long does a typical patient, how long is their adjustment take usually?
Yeah, it can vary depending on what that person needs that day. Right. Usually it's roughly like 4 to 7 minutes, I would put that frame.
So not long, like not that long. So do you let the body rest at all? Like what is like, okay. So
Great question.
Like, can you run me through a little bit?
Yeah. So after we deliver the first adjustment, we like to give the body a little time to process. So we let them lay on the table, take some deep breaths. We typically, when the body's receptive to the next one, but yeah, giving them some time to process on the table can be extremely beneficial and part of the analysis.
So do you go to like the next person and like start working on them and then come back? Mm-hmm. How does this work with kids? Like who are
that can be different. Obviously like children from 0 to 2, not really a thing. You just kind of like get them, as they crawl up on the table. But for kids that are able to lay there 100%, especially as like families age, it's like from those kids, 5 and up, they can lay pretty still.
So you said a lot of it is based around like analysis is starting with the feet. Mm-hmm. So, but you also said you work with kids with like neurosensory, who are not usually going to lay down and just be super patient. How do you take that technique and approach assessing what the needs are of that individual that day who's like flapping and yelling?
Yes. Lots and lots and lots of practice of learning how to have a very quick analysis for that kid that might only lay on the table for like 5 seconds for me to say, what is everything that's happening in this kid? Do a very quick scan so that I can be as specific and efficient as possible. Yes. So truthfully, lots and lots of practice. And like working with kids that don't have those struggles, then you know, just kind of like how kids' bodies work just a little bit differently than adults of like what I'm going to be typically looking for. So yeah, practice.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the number one things I say when I'm just like saying in general, part of being a pediatric specialist or like expert is being able to assess and deliver the adjustment substantially faster. Like when they are not compliant, like that is the big difference that I'll tell patients, because I'll have people who mom will start and she'll be like, oh, I would love to bring my kid here. And I'm like, well, you should. And they're like, well, we tried bringing him to the other chiropractor for years with my adjustments and he just would never get on the table. And I'm like, that was necessary for an adjustment to happen for them to get on the table. Like we'll adjust him in the waiting room if we need to, type of thing.
Right.
And they're like, oh, I don't know that he'll let you touch him. And I'm like, oh, he will let me. You don't know.
Yeah. And we get those same objections too, 100%.
So as a farm girl, okay, so like the narrative I tell myself is that I live in Northwest Wisconsin and that those farmers, there's just no freaking way that they are going to be okay with any kind of woo-woo, not crack 'em, crunch 'em, rock 'em, sock 'em robot type adjustment. Like, so when that personality, is that like one of the biggest hurdles within like that type of personality? Is that one of the biggest hurdles within doing a tonal technique?
I say one of the bigger hurdles is people that are used to more of a manual adjustment, right? Like that can be a challenge, but we put a lot of education into the very first day so that there's like no big surprises. Like we don't want people to come back and be like disappointed they didn't understand like what they're committing to. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I talk through all those different tonal things that we look for and tell them our technique is different from the first day, follows them to the second day. And so that they don't feel like caught off guard.
Right.
But once people like learn that this does work and they feel like they're in that right place, it doesn't become an issue.
Mm-hmm. That makes, yeah. And they start seeing results. Like, so I'm assuming day one is really based around educating on points that tend to be the most common questions. Can you kind of walk me through what a day one looks like in your office?
Yeah. Day ones are my favorite. I love new patients. Like I do quite a few of them. Obviously the first point is just like connecting with that patient, figuring out why they're there. But then before we move on, our office talks about 4 truths that we make sure each person knows. And the first truth is that your body is self-healing. So if they don't know that, like your body has this wonderful ability to heal from the inside out. And it does that through the second truth, which is that your nervous system controls absolutely everything. Like wonderful continuation of communication between your brain and your body back up to your brain. But then the third truth is that the stress of your life around you, whether physical, chemical, or emotional, puts subluxations in the system or roadblocks. And so they're like, oh, never heard that word before. And that can be a fun conversation starter. And then the fourth truth is that your nervous system continues to learn. It's learned poor patterns up to this point, which is why you're in our office and we need to help it learn a new state of working better. And so after we go through the truths, we are huge people of the insight scan. So the scans are a huge resource, right? Mm-hmm. Of like how we recommend care. And that's a huge bridge for people that don't understand tonal, aren't sure about this, but like the scans can be such a tangible thing to say we are monitoring your progress. Mm-hmm. And so we do the scans and then our exam is more posture. We do some muscle testing as well as tonal testing and balance exams and x-ray if we need it, but that's typically it for our day one.
Okay. So adjust. Where did where did the 4 truths thing come? Is that a Tulsi thing? Is that a philosophy thing? What?
Yeah, it's a Dr. Fletcher thing.
It's beautiful. I am going to incorporate it into my clinic next week. We
just keep it pretty simple.
Yeah, but like because so often, no matter the technique of your clinic, um, patients are showing up not likely unless they've recently moved to the area and they're like, I was at a clinic like this. I sought you out. Yes. Great. Most of the time, no matter your technique, you're sitting across from someone who you're about to change their world in educating them of like, we do things different.
Yeah.
Like we do a more manual adjustment for the most part, but like still the fact that we care plan. The fact that is the insight, they're just like the fact that we don't adjust on day one. People are just like, okay, why? So I just love hearing how you incorporate that.
Yeah, so I think as chiropractors, we try to make it so complicated. Like the way we explain care, the way we explain chiropractic, when it can be so very simple, is that we're here to work with your nervous system so you can perform at a better level. Because you can explain those stressors so easily and related to each person's life, especially through the year of COVID, that emotional stressors are so very high for people, and it affects you just as much as a physical stressor would, and chemical stressors. But we tend to make it so complicated when it is so very simple.
So then on day 2, you kind of go over results and go over care plan pricing, and then get their first adjustment then. So how do you kind of walk so let's say that I am a new patient, not to chiropractic.
Yeah.
I've gone to diversified chiropractors on and off over the year, and you're about to walk me through kind of like, do you verbally kind of talk them through?
Absolutely.
Obviously, without having a specific example in front of you, can you kind of give me a general dialogue of what that sounds like?
Yeah. And it's really similar to what I said earlier of how I explained chiropractic. I do that on the day 1. And then when they lay again down on day 2, I said, okay, so if you remember, we're starting by looking to your feet. Remember, they tell us lots of information of where your nervous system stores tension and stress that we need released. If they have the same leg length inequality as the first day, I bring that up, like just like the first day, your right leg's pulling up about an inch short. We're looking to bring balance to that. And so I let them know that you're going to find that we're just going to come search for different inputs of where your body might need to get adjusted. So you're going to find me, come touch different areas. And then when you're ready, I'll let you know. And so, there's some different indicators that are easy to explain. Like if the head turns one way or the other, it can bring balance to the legs, et cetera, et cetera. But typically, once you find the window of the nervous system, I tell them, like, when I come touch here, your body goes balanced. That's your body responding, saying, absolutely, this is where we need to do Lauryn's first adjustment. So what we have them do is while we're doing that, they take big breaths in and out to help open up that breath wave, as well as to activate more of the rest and digest part of the nervous system. And then we also have them nod their head, because that also puts motion into the body to begin to activate different muscle patterns, as well as make them be the active participant in the adjustment. Because as we know, we don't do the correcting, the body does, right? We're just the facilitator of that. And so after we deliver the adjustment and talk through that, and they're done, we talk them through a lot of like what to expect afterwards. And so with our adjustments, we tell them, because it's more in that parasympathetic rest and digest, they might be very tired today and tomorrow, and that's normal. They might have some of those digestive changes, which is normal. They might have soreness as their muscles just begin to work slightly differently to open up.
They'll be sore?
Yeah, we tell people all that, and they usually are, almost always.
Really?
Yeah, because even though the adjustment feels so light, it's accessing directly to that nervous system, beginning to activate different muscles to just change your posture just ever so slightly, which can feel like mini workouts for the muscles. So it shouldn't be painful. It should feel kind of like they maybe worked out soreness. They sometimes can feel kind of fidgety, which is normal and to be expected, but we typically ask them to drink water to help flush out the stuff in the system and go get a little movement into.
Awesome. So I mean, I get this even with that. Yeah, that's beautiful. You said something about the breath wave?
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that at all?
Yeah. So when people lay down on the table, lots of people aren't really able to take deep breaths. And like what you want is you want their breath to be able to be open from all the way from the sacrum all the way up to the occiput. When they take big breaths, you should see their breath open and move. but a lot of times it's real stuck in just like thoracics, down, meaning like their body's more in that stressful state. And so those are things we just initially look at and make sure that they're moving better by the end, which typically they are, especially if they're focusing on breathing on like more sacrum areas, more occipital areas.
Very cool. So I get this question even with my technique because I'm like a 3-minute adjustment for the most part. Not the first one, but like, what do you say when someone says they go, that's it? Like after their first adjustment, that's it?
That's plenty. But like that is a common question that we get. And so we even have a educational handout that we've created that just says that's it at the top. And it explains again to them what tonal is and how it's different and how it's still impactful. So yes, that is a question we hear all the time.
Yeah.
We also hear, is this energy work? And it's like, nope, because it can seem kind of similar, touching different areas, breathing, but nope, it is chiropractic. I'm like, okay. Yeah, they typically notice or ask, what can I expect after my adjustment, which usually we already have talked about that if they ask that, as well as when will I notice changes? But I feel like, don't we all hear that one? Like, when am I going to feel better? Right. And so I don't know. What I do know is that you just got a great adjustment. You might be noticing changes today, but it might not be for a month from now. Like, I don't know. So,
there is a lot of talk. I feel like recently, air quotes, around just the longevity of being a tonal chiropractor. Like, yes, it's beautiful. It gets great results, just as well or whatever, like as any other technique. We don't need to get into like the technique wars or anything like that. But like from the statement of, even if we said all techniques are equal, and helpful and beautiful.
Yeah.
There is something very appealing as a female in a high volume clinic to incorporate more tonal of like, well, if I can beat my body up and get good results with patients, or not beat my body up and really get good results with patients, it just seems like, chiropractors we beat ourselves up. My patients are constantly being like, how are you like bent over this table? Like, and I'm like, oh yeah, chiropractors are getting shoulder surgeries, wrist surgeries, like all of this stuff. And so, is that the longer you're in this, like continue to really fuel, like, glad you chose this technique or,
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I noticed that while I was in school. I was like, this is going to be something I can do for a very long time. And it's been hard for me to hear like my colleagues talk about how they're in like pain already, like their wrists hurt or whether it is shoulders or whatnot, and how they're just like exhausted by the end of the day physically. And I sometimes, we're a high volume office as well, sometimes just like mentally, I feel exhausted from the amount of like thinking you just need to do. So I can't imagine having the physical components of that as well, because I never typically feel like physically burned out by the end of an adjustment shift. If anything, it might be just like mentally, if it was a very full day. And so, I hope others find the work if it resonates with them so that they can be a chiropractor longer.
It seems frustrating. And obviously you and I only know the Northwestern experience. And I feel like Northwestern gets beat up on by me all the time.
That's okay.
They are not going to be sponsors of the She Slays Today podcast anytime soon. Let's just say that. I won't be. But like, from like just talking to other people, it really seems like you have to find tonal outside of chiropractic school. Right. And I wonder why that is. Like,
Northwestern is very resistant to change too, not to be kind of like,
I wonder if they're all resistant.
Because as I was in school and knowing like, this is what I believe is going to be a huge part of the future of chiropractic is this tonal work. I went many times trying to get it as an elective, and they were very resistant to allowing that to happen, which is just so unfortunate. Because I thought, well, if I'm going to pay for this schooling, I wish it would go towards more of what I'm passionate about. And I know that there's going to be others that feel the same way. Like, I don't want to go take a taping seminar when I could be taking a tonal seminar. So, but yeah, they're very resistant to things that they don't understand.
Yeah.
And things that aren't on their model.
Yeah. And now we've just translated to like two people having opinions and having coffee.
Yeah.
We left the expert portion. And the other thing I wonder, and this is all just like, I just wonder, is I know that schools are really focused on getting their kids to passports.
For sure.
And boards dictate, you know, like licensure dictate boards dictate this. And like, there's something very measurable in the, like, you got a cavitation, you felt that bone and you pushed the bone in. And I, as a school, feel very confident that you now are a chiropractor. And I feel like schools really want measurable stuff. And like, do you think that that's part of the issue, is that a more tonal technique is harder to measure? Like, you are a capable student who now has acquired this skill and you've proven it to me in clinic.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, for sure. And I think that there's going to be other schools that, like, and I already know, like down at Life, like Tonal is really beginning to take a really good presence, and there's lots of clubs on campus, which has been really encouraging. I think part of it just comes down to more of schools that are more white coat based versus principal based, which I feel like they kind of flow in two different directions.
Well, and that's tough too, because like Dee was like definitely not tonal, right? Like you hear about some of those initial adjustments, and it's like, bring the hammer.
However, if you look more into Dr. Tulski's work, he takes the word tonal from Dee Dee's talk about tone. And I don't know enough to go into depth about that, but he talks about assessing the body for its tone.
Yeah. And so we've kind of just lost, it's almost like we've taken the adjustment part and then lost the assessment part.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's, so as you can't speak to this because you've always been a tonal adjuster, but I know that, you know, this being my 11th year in practice and graduating, very much like I said, I went to a corn thing, was like, that's incredible. And then I went right back to school and I was like, pound the high spot, side posture. Am I a good student? Am I getting A's? And went into practice. I chose internships based on the word pediatric versus technique. I ended up in more diversified pediatric clinics for my experiences. And so I therefore became a diversified doctor, and it's tough. Like literally it was like, I had to talk myself down from a ledge because I used to double side posture. Just double side posture both, to like going to like, listen, you pick one SI joint. If you're going to like, make sure you know, like pick one and then maybe do drop. And like, so like that was kind of a part of my evolution of like coming out of a flying 7 into that. And so
specific work.
Yeah. And so it is tough, especially, you know, we see 500 and some people a week. And then you go to these seminars. So I went to MC2, which is, do you know, like, are those super similar?
No, they're different, but I took MC2 as well. That's a great
one. So took it and was like, this is cool. We are going to start incorporating this. It's hard. It's exhausting because I have all these patients that are just like ready to come once a week for the rest of their life. And then you're like starting to change things on them. And you're like, oh, I do not want to rock the boat. And so just for chiropractors,
Go ahead. So are you wondering like, how does one like try adding this to your practice? Is that what you're asking me?
I mean, I wasn't going to ask you because I didn't expect you to have an answer to it, but like.
And in a way I do, because the team that I work for, like he started his practice in a more like diversified model. I think he did more, what is it called? I can't remember, but he did more of a diversified model that his body was really suffering from and not doing well, which is when he found tonal and he knew he needed to make a change. But the way he approached people is like, hey, like I'm learning something different, like just to be a better provider for you. Like, do you mind if I try this today? And so they'd be like, well, sure. Like, if you think this is what I need, because I think so much of however you practice comes down to your certainty and your confidence in your adjustment. Like, if you truly believe that you rocked whatever that person needs for their body to respond great, like, they're going to, and they need to feel that from you. They need to believe that they're in the right place no matter how you practice. So that's how I would approach it, is just saying, I'm trying something new because I want to be better and I want to serve you with the best care that I believe is available. So do you mind if I try something different today?
I love it. Well, Brenna, tell people, like, I don't know, like, do you want people following you on social, or if people just want to like stalk you a little bit, tell them your social so they can like follow you in your clinic and your clinic's social.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a huge Instagram presence. I'll be very real. So my practice is at Experience Life MN. That's our office page. I don't have a huge personal Instagram presence, so you won't.
Just if people want to put a face to the name type of thing. So.
Yeah. But I know Dr. Tulski is getting more of a presence on Instagram, so feel free to seek him out too for his upcoming seminars, which I highly would recommend. And our practice, Dr. Jeremy will be one of the people taking over his work in the future. So
awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for being willing to come and talk. Like, it's a question I get from students a lot of like, how did you decide your technique? How did you decide on a technique? How am I supposed to decide on a technique? So I do like just having different representation of like, here's a technique and here's a really thriving clinic. Because I think a lot of people think like, oh, well, you can't be high volume because you got to spend 20 minutes with the people. And like, it's woo woo and it's this and it's that. And like, so I love being like, oh no. Nope, it's very science-based. And here's a high volume clinic that is rocking it. And they're going to be practicing longer than us manual people because they don't need shoulder surgery. So.
No, thanks for having me today.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right, She Slayers, go check out Tulski Technique. Go check out MC2. Or is it MC squared?
I never know. But
I never know. It's MC2. TRT.
Yep. Network.
Yep. MLS. Have you heard that one?
Nope.
Oh, okay. So in my conversation with Andrea Lang, gosh, I don't know, probably 50 episodes ago, I'm talking to her. So at Northwestern, we're just sheltered. We're sheltered people, right? Yeah. And I'm talking to her and she's talking about these names and she's like, and then MLS technique. And I'm like, what is that? Does that stand for something? And she's like, make love to the spine. And I'm like, oh my God, somebody named their technique that? And she's like, yeah, yep.
No, haven't heard of that one.
Yep. So that's a technique out there. I have yet to go and look that training out, but I definitely have been wanting to do a Tulski. Definitely wanted to look into TRT. I wonder if Brett Jones and like what they do with Kairos, if that is a little more different things, but like, yeah, I
Brett Jones is pretty tight with Dr. Tulski. Actually, he's taken his work. And so they've collaborated before. So I know there's part of it incorporated, but probably not the whole thing.
Yeah. So I guess I would say in like closing and final notes, I feel like students get so stressed about what is the right technique as if there is a wrong one. And like, I would just say, just play, like just go to seminars, play around with it, and find what works with your body and what kind of the universal energy, like you're going to be attracted to something kind of like your experience where you were just like, yep, and be willing to listen to what your body is saying and like what kind of innate intelligence is guiding you towards. And then, just play with it because there's tons of options.
Expose yourself to as many things as you can during school, because once you're in practice, you're not going to have the flexibility to do those things. Like try to figure out what lights you up before you graduate.
Yep. And seek out smart internships. Like unless you are going into clinics, knowing exactly what technique you want, if you're still like, I have no idea, go make sure, like, go do a more tonal, go do a more manual or diversified clinic. And like, you're going to walk away and like, I feel like your heart is just going to kind of lead you one way or the other. So
no, for sure.
Thank you so, so much for being a guest. You did great.
Oh, thanks.
Everyone's going to love you. You Enneagram 2, you.
Oh, love.
They love me. So, all right, She Slayers, until next week. Bye.